And welcome back to another Between the Pages book chat. And today our guest is fantasy author Elizabeth Lavender, and she's here to talk about her YA fantasy series, Sunspear. And now I'm going to turn it over to her and let her introduce herself. So take it away.
All right. Thank you for having me. So basically, my name is Elizabeth Lavender, and my series is a sci-fi fantasy. And it is right now it is 3 books long. I'm working on the fourth one. So the first one in the series is The Spinning of Deception. The second one is Deception's Hold, and the third one is Shadowed Bonds. So, like I said, I'm currently um, working on the fourth one, about 53,000 words into it. So, the third one just came out in October. So, and I work full time, so I have to get all my book writing and marketing and all that kind of stuff, newsletters, in the evenings and on the weekends. So, a lot of people are asking me when's the next one coming out, and I can't really tell you because it usually takes me a little while with trying to
Yeah.
manage working and book writing and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, so basically, it is like I said, it's got its hands in sci-fi and fantasy. It is more geared more towards young adults, but I have people that are like my 15-year-old that I have that reads it, but I also have people that have grandkids that read it. So, and they say they enjoy it. So it's got something for everybody. Um, so our story starts out. We have two Sunspear bearers, and the Sunspear is the weapon of choice in the book. It is made up of a half spear and a half sword, and it has a jewel in the middle. And the reason it's called a sun spear is because when it catches the natural lights like the sun, the moon, then it makes the jewel in the middle sparkle and give off a light that looks pretty awesome. So that's where the name comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was reading the blurb, it kind of gave me a bit of a Star Wars vibe to it. Would you say that's an apt comparison, or is it just me
Well, it is
reading it?
a very good comparison as far as the world that it finds itself in. That's why the sci-fi part it does have a very sci-fi feel as far as the world, and the Star Wars one is the nearest one I would say that it fits into as far as the space and the kind of the technology and the world that I would imagine it in. Um, so we do find ourselves with our two Sun Spear bearers. We have one named Dante, and he fights pretty much in the open. His father is on the other side, fighting against him and serving our other villain, the Dark Lord, that kind of runs everything. And when you get into the book, you'll find out exactly how that ended up happening, that they're on separate sides. Then we have our other Sun Spear Bearer, our main character, and she is just called the girl through the first 2 books. And she has to remain, her identity has to remain hidden. And once you get into the story, you'll find out exactly why. But she is also a Sun Spear Bearer. She's trained in secret. And like I said, the reasons for that become clear once we start delving into her past and some of her family, and there's reasons, like I said, for that. She does have the gift of visions. And once we start getting into it, there is a specific vision that she gets from the past of a past event that's happened, and it involves Dante's family. And she learns the truth of what actually happened in that event, and she's able to get that information basically to Dante, and that information basically gets everything rolling in the book, a series of events. And the information, the truth about what happened in that event, has the power to kind of reverse a lot of things. And it sets Dante onto a task that he has to do that is pretty dangerous, that could end in a couple of different ways. So that's where we kind of find ourselves at the end of the first book and opening up into the second one. And so that's kind of a pretty quick rundown of what's going on. So there's a lot of different things going on in different directions in the book. So
Okay, so how would you describe your two main characters? What are their personalities like?
wow, Dante is very um, he's very driven to keep things to keep anyone else from getting hurt because he's already lost. In his mind, he's already lost his father because his father is fighting on the other side, and he sees all the terrible things that his father is doing in the name of the Dark Lord and is still doing because the colonies are being massacred and things. And of course, and he's already lost he's already lost his mother, and his brother is also counted in the losses. So he's very driven to make sure that no one else falls. And of course, he's seeing the colonies already suffering still from what's going on. So, and he's an awesome fighter. He has a huge heart, spirit, and we'll see that as the book continues with things that he has to do and the challenge that's up ahead of him. Um, the girl is kind of a mixed bag. Um, her family is very dysfunctional to say the least, and that's one of the reasons why she has to kind of keep um, her training hidden. Her father is playing both sides of the um, pretending to be on one side but really serving another side. So her training can't be found out that she's training. Her mother has to do a lot to protect her. So she has to learn to play a role and be one thing and not let that be known. So that way she basically survives in that household, in that environment. So with that being said, she's she's very driven. She's very good at what she does, but she has to wage that same battle in secret, just to be able to survive. Um, and with that, because of everything that happens to her, she has a lot of demons like inside of her head, and she has to deal with those. And that's what a lot of runs through the book. We have a lot of the Sunspear battles and things like that, but we have a lot of internal battles that we find that our characters have to fight against themselves, basically, because those are always being drawn out and they're always having to deal with those. And so for her, um, she's got a lot of those that interfere sometimes with when she's trying to fight. And she also has the vision, so she sees some pretty horrible things that come back to haunt her. So
Okay, so one of our viewers likes the sound of it, so he thinks
cool.
it's okay. So tell us a little bit about the world. How did you meld the sci-fi part of it with the more fantasy elements of it?
Um, well, once I got the characters and started thinking about how I wanted to do them, the world kind of put itself together because I've never been one of those people that came up with the world first. I came up with the story. The story kind of put itself together and the characters. And when that put itself together, the world kind of just came alongside. So for me, and I am a huge Star Wars fan. I'm also a huge Tolkien fan. So for me, the world kind of served the characters and the storyline rather than, I guess, the other way. So once I had the other, then, and you'll see when you start reading the books, um, I know there's a lot of people that when they read a fantasy and stuff, they'll find that the story, like the details of the world, are like like does a lot of description. And when you read my stuff, you'll find that that's really not the case. I spend a lot more time on the characters, what they're feeling, what they're thinking, like what they're doing next, what's going on in their heads. I do spend a little bit of time like describing the world, but it's more of like a function of like you need to know that they used the speeder to go here, but I don't spend a lot of time describing like their surroundings. I just never been like that. So if you're one of those people that needs to picture every detail, then I'm afraid that probably going to be disappointed with me because I don't do that. So
Yeah, well, there are a lot of people who like to focus on the characters and don't. Then description doesn't matter so much.
yeah.
So I think you're okay. Okay, so what was the hardest scene or type of scene that you had to write in the series?
Wow, I've had a lot. Well, it wasn't really hard, but because with me, once I get inside my character's head, it's really just flowed because I've gotten to the point where I know what they would think and they would feel and what they would do. So, but there's been several scenes that have been very emotionally charged. So it took a while to write it. Probably the first scene that was took me a minute to write was there is a scene in the girls' bedroom that's pretty early in book one, after she's had a very tragic thing happen in her family. She's lost someone very dear to her. She's faced the murderer, and she's in her bedroom, and she comes face to face with a darkness, like a entity, I guess. And she starts to go on, it draws her to come on this path with her, with it. And she considers going on that path because at that point she's very vulnerable. She really wants revenge, and that's the only thing she's thinking about. So she's ready to throw aside all of her training, everything that she's been taught, because all she cares about is getting revenge on the person that's done this and killed this person that's dear to her. Um, and so that one was hard to write just because it was so from the beginning of when the murder happened to the end of that scene when she has to make that choice. It was emotional from that scene from the beginning to the end. And so it was a culmination of like 3 days where she's struggling and she's going back and forth, and she finally has to make a choice to decide, is she going to go this way? Is she going to reject her training, or is she going to um, reject this and go ahead and let this person get away with it? And um, so for her, it's a big moment, and it actually ends up haunting her throughout the series because she comes back to that moment. So that one it wasn't hard to write, but it took time because it's a pivotal moment in her life. So yeah, that was probably a hard one to write for that
Okay,
reason.
so do you have a favorite scene or type of scene that you wrote in the series?
Favorite. Some of the favorite ones were also harder to write, but I have a, I have seen the scene where Dante does his confrontation, his huge confrontation where he has to do his task. And then after he's done, the exchange between him and the girl. It's really sweet. So that's probably was one of my favorite, and some of the ones in book three between um, him and her, the banter between the two of them. So they're really sweet together. So that's probably some of my favorite scenes. So
Okay, so tell us a little bit about some of the secondary characters. Are they presents or are they more of a supporting cast?
they are a supporting cast, but they do play some play very important roles. We have Alika and Seth. They are the teachers for the girl and Dante. Seth is Dante's teacher. Um, the elders, they're called elders, and they're kind of like, I would say, kind of like the mentors or the Jedi masters in the Star Wars, like Obi-Wan would be to Luke and that kind of thing. So Seth is Dante's, Alika is the girl, and Alina's. Alina is the girl's companion and kind of is acts like her sister, best friend kind of thing. So they train together. So Alina is another supporting cast member. So they most of the time when they get into trouble and they have to go on a task to do to try to find out information about Black Dragon or the Dark Lord, then they're normally together. And Alina has to spend a lot of time getting the girl out of trouble because she tends to go head first and thinks more about trying to get information than trying to get out in time. So we have a lot of encounters where Alina's having to pull out and say, "Hey, we need to leave now. We're like about to be discovered." And she's just like, "Well, maybe if we can just take a couple more minutes, we can get some more." No, they're like on top of us. We need to go now. So those two work together really well. And then on Dante's side, we have, like I said, Seth that teaches him, but we have a couple of other characters that Caleb and Lena, and we have one of the commanders that plays, that is like a best friend as well as a commander to the two of them. Lena is Dante's cousin, and she's also head of kind of everything of the side that's fighting against the Dark Lord, and Caleb is her husband. So there's a lot of wisecracking that goes between Dante and Caleb and the commander, and so, and then we have Lena that tries to rein the three men in, and she doesn't. It's kind of a useless task because they do what they want to. So, but when she needs them to, um, you know, go and run an attack or something like that, or do defenses and stuff, they will mind her at that point. That's about, but other than that, no. So
Okay, so what are your main characters afraid of?
they're afraid of failing, and not like failing like small stuff. They're afraid of failing the colonies because they know something is going on at Black Dragon. They know something. Um, they've seen what the Black Dragon is capable of, and they know like how many lives are at stake, and they know that their leadership, um, if they fail, then they know those lives are in their hands. So yeah, so that's probably what they're afraid of. That's their biggest fear, that if something big happens, that the blood is going to basically be on their hands, even though they're not the ones that did it. They were supposed to be in charge of keeping it from happening. So if that does happen, that's going to haunt them. So yeah, fear of failure, but not like in a small way. It's galaxies are on their shoulders. So
Okay, so you've got one foot in sci-fi, one foot in fantasy. So, have you ever considered writing just in either genre or in another genre? Or are you going to stick with what you got so far?
I I wouldn't be opposed to writing in another genre or just one or the other, but this has been a case where the story itself dictated where I wrote. So it wasn't a case where I just picked, those two genres. It was just where the story fit. It had elements of both. When I finish this series, whenever that is, which could be a while because I'm anticipating this will be at least 6 books. But the way I'm writing at the moment, I think it's going to take more than 6 books. But when I finish this excuse me, I finish this series, um, whatever the next story is, I'll just kind of see what genre that puts me in. Um, Honestly, I have a counseling background. I have a master's in counseling, so I could see myself writing something in like a psychological something, or just because actually use my counseling background a fair amount in this series, just playing in the characters' minds. And the titles, the deception part, is there's a reason for that. When you look at the Dark Lord, you will find that a big part of his ammo is playing with people's minds and just spinning deception in places that you wouldn't believe. Um, so I'm fairly good at that part of it. If I say so myself, once you start reading, I'll let
Yeah.
y'all be the judge of that.
Well, that
Um,
makes a good villain too. So
yes, he's very good at that. I mean, he's good with a sword and that kind of thing, but his supreme weapon is taking something, taking an event, taking truth, and spinning it the way he wants you to see it. And so that's the big battle in the book, is his ability to do that, and the destructive power that he's able to do that with, and use it for his own ends. So,
okay, so I think we'll wrap it up here, and I'll let you
okay.
tell everybody where they can find you and your books.
You can find me in a lot of places. I am on like all the social media. Still not sure how to work it half the time, but anyway, I'm there. But you can find me on my website at elizabethlavender.net. And from there, it has a link to my Amazon, the link to the Amazon thing for all my books. It has a link to sign up for my newsletter so you always know what's going on. I'm honestly working on one this weekend, so I do those monthly. But if you go to my website at elizabethlavender.net, then that'll take you everywhere else. So,
Okay, and I have links to the series down below in the description if you want to check out the books. I believe I put the website too, so I know I put something. The link I think was your website. Anyway, so thank you for being here. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
thank you for
And
having me.
yeah, and our viewers liked it,
Cool.
and as did our other viewers. So, and that was so it was a pleasure chatting with you, and that's the end of the show. And be sure to be back next weekend when we have another author to interview. So that's
Great.
all for
Thank
now.
you.
Bye.